Let's talk about an emotion that often surprises people when it erupts in their grief, and that is anger. And we don't talk about anger as a totally normal and totally valid part of grief enough. We often think of our grief as wall to wall sadness, but actually, there is a whole rainbow of emotions in our grief. Some of these emotions can be really difficult for us, particularly given the societal stigmas that are often placed on them. Whether that's anger, whether that's guilt, whether that's shame, that are all really common and really valid in our grief as we process through the loss. And if this episode of Death on the Daily leaves you with anything, I hope that it leaves you with an understanding that anger is totally normal. It's a part of, well, not just grief, but actually our whole human experience. And it's also a healthy response to our grief. And in my own personal journey, I found finding presence with my anger, being able to acknowledge that it's there, and then to have personal practices that I can reach for in any one moment that can really support me to tend to that anger, to listen to it and to say, hey, I'm listening. Let me understand what you're trying to tell me, as well as to support my nervous system through it. Because obviously, when we're angry, our nervous system is dysregulated. So, in today's episode, what I'm going to be sharing with you is a few of the reasons why anger shows up. And then we're going to go into a few powerful tools that I found personally really, really helpful when it comes to tending to my anger as and when it erupts in my waves of grief. So, anger and grief can take many, many forms. It could show up as us being frustrated and angry at the situation, at the injustice of it. It can show up as us being angry at ourselves. We can be angry at others, whether it's family members, whether it's friends. We can be angry at our support network and people for not showing up in the ways that we needed them to. Our anger can also be directed at doctors or others who have been there in caring roles. Our anger might be directed up at the skies, at the universe, at God, at whatever our spiritual beliefs are. Definitely something that I have done many times, shaking my fist at the skies when it comes to the injustice I feel of my daughter being taken away from me and me not getting to live my life with her alongside. Our anger can also be directed at the person who has died as well. Something that could be as a subconscious sense of abandonment, of the fact that they aren't here and we really need them here now. It could also be anger from unresolved situations in the past with them. There can obviously be really complicated relationships when it comes to those who we love who have died. And actually, within Death on the Daily, I think it's really important to acknowledge that there's a lot of talk, and I often talk about my grief as love because that's how I experience it, given the nature of those relationships. But actually, our relationships can sometimes be difficult, and sometimes actually someone perhaps in our family has died and we don't feel a lot of love for them because of what they've done for us, or a distance that we've felt in our relationship, or a whole plethora of other reasons. But when we look a little bit deeper at our anger, we can often find that it is sitting as a secondary emotion on top of hurt, on top of pain, on top of a sense of feeling helpless, feeling out of control. And the reason that things can feel out of control is because when someone dies and we then get thrown into the immediate change that death and that grief brings, it can feel like an out of body experience. The world can feel like spinning and it can feel like we have no control over what's happening. And what anger can sometimes do is it can give us a temporary sense of power. It can help us to move through these situations. It can also be a shield for us. Our anger sitting above the pain underneath it, that rawness of the emotion for the loss, and as we process through the fact that that person is never coming back, our anger can also be there to mask stuff that is really, really difficult. And grief is dysregulating on the nervous system, and actually what it can do is it can throw us into a state of what's called hyper arousal. And that is where, for example, the fight response, the flight response, those fear states, they live. And actually in the fight response, we know we've got our fist balled up. It's that immediate, it's that primal instinct. I am going to go in and I'm going to fight. And with that, that can mean that in our grief, anger and other emotions can just feel like they erupt out of nowhere. But it's important to note that we live in a society where for the majority of us, anger isn't exactly encouraged. And now, obviously, there are very unhealthy ways that we can just be angry people as we move through this world. So I'm not here to say let's all be angry in general, but actually what I know is that our human experience is built off of all of our emotions, and healthily allowing ourselves to process through that wheel of all of our emotions as and when the waves of them come. What this isn't about is what we're often taught to do in society, which is to suppress our feelings of anger, to not voice them, to not speak our truth. It's no surprise to me that I have hypothyroid, a autoimmune condition, a diagnosis that actually I believe has stemmed from me suppressing my emotions. When I was a young child, my family used to call me Moody Madam. I learned very early that there's a shame in being moody, in stomping around, in expressing when I'm feeling angry. But in my grief journeys, actually, I found anger as something that I just can't run and hide from. And if you've been tuning into Death on the Daily, you know that this podcast is all about us finding presence with all of the ways that death and grief show up for us on the daily. And within my own journey, actually, grief has been a real teacher for how to hold my anger. When it comes to my daughter, I had some brilliant expanders. And I would say this for anyone who is a supporter of someone who's grieving: do what my cousin Kira did. And she was around my house, and I just said to her, I think I whispered it, and I said, Kira, I feel absolutely effing furious. I'm so angry right now. And she said, that's okay. You be angry and I'm going to be alongside because I'm angry with you. She met me in my anger, and that was one of the most powerful things that anyone has just ever done for me. She said to me, because I said to her, I was like, I just want to go into the forest and kick piles of leaves and piles of dirt, which I did then do with my husband, and he actually did find quite hilarious because I'm sure I look so funny. In my mind, I was like the Incredible Hulk, but I don't think I look like that quite in person, because I was so furious. And I was, in truth, I was furious at the universe. I was furious at whatever gods and goddesses are up in the sky for making this happen. I was furious at Mother Nature for giving my daughter this birth defect, for nature not going through the process as, in my mind, as it should have, as I had wholly believed was going to be her destiny with every ounce of my being. And then I was, in a second, I had that dream taken away from me. So just as in those experiences, my anger mattered. And actually, it was really powerful for me to be able to acknowledge it, to speak to my cousin about it, to speak to my husband about it, to speak to my therapist and my coaches about it, to get more open with expressing how I'm really feeling. Even just last week, my dad called me because last month my two grandmothers, actually, they died within 6 days of each other. And my dad called me to check and make sure that I was really comfortable doing the eulogy. And he really riled me by basically, because I can look at it now compassionately and say he was trying to protect his baby girl. I know that that was the heart of everything that he was sharing, but he basically called me from his own experience of having delivered the eulogy at my granddad's funeral. And he said, you do realize that it's very different to normal public speaking when you're doing it at a funeral. And I saw red because I thought, well, you didn't say this when my brother delivered the eulogy at my granddad's funeral as well. And you certainly were there at my daughter's woodland burial when I personally placed her into the ground and delivered my words from my heart. And I had to speak my truth. And I'm proud of myself because I said in quite a sharp way, I'll be okay. I've done this. And if I cry, who cares? I'm proud of myself for speaking my truth, but actually in moving through that anger, what that enabled me to do was to very quickly get to the other side. I, in that moment, noticed my anger had come up. I took a breath, and from that space, I could then, with that compassionate presence, see, actually, I'm here. My dad's speaking in love. How can I be compassionate to both myself and to him? And it changed the whole trajectory of that conversation, whilst also making sure that I spoke my truth. So anger is a powerful energy. It's certainly raw. It's a real fire inside of us. And it's actually a real protective energy. Anger's there to fire boundary up around us that goes, don't touch this. I want to be protecting myself. So I come to my anger with a real compassionate presence, really, really understanding that actually it's here for a reason. There's something underneath it that if I can find presence with that, then I can really understand how I can move through my anger and onto the other side with a deepened sense of awareness with myself and what I really need or what I really need to say in this moment. So rather than doing what we're taught since childhood and pushing our anger away, what if we met our anger with compassion and gentle curiosity? So now let's look at some tools of support to help you to meet your anger and yourself exactly where you are. These are a few practices from my personal toolkit, as well as informed by my work as a grief coach. I support other grievers to navigate their forwards path with their grief, to journey through that which feels really difficult, to find presence and connection with that full spectrum of emotions, including our anger as and when it surfaces. So first up, we've got naming it. And this is so simple. It's simply saying, I'm angry right now. And that is totally normal. That is totally okay. Whatever you need to say to yourself in that moment to help you see that this is a normal part of grief. And for a lot of us, actually, where we've been programmed to push anger down, to suppress it, to numb it, to avoid it, actually just bringing our anger out of the shadows, verbalizing it, saying, I'm angry right now. I see you, anger. Actually, that in itself can be really, really powerful. Because what it does is it means that we can just sit back for a second. We can see it for what it is. We can normalize it. We can give it a name. We can actually say, I'm here to observe you. I'm not here to just try and sweep you under the carpet. So second up, we've got breathing with it. And with this one, it's after you've named it, what you're going to do is just ground yourself in this moment. What that might be is taking a few gentle breaths. It might be if connecting into your breath is uncomfortable for you to do so, which it is for some of us and has been for me in my journey at points when my PTSD is very present and my nervous system is incredibly dysregulated. Could be instead of connecting into your breath that you just connect into your feet on the floor, your seat of your chair underneath you. And what this does is it just extends it from, I'm aware that you're here, anger, into just a moment of compassionate connection and compassionate pause. Just in that moment, taking a few breaths and flowing really, I'd say flow really intuitively for what feels right for you. If you're able to, and if it's comfortable to do so, you might put a hand over your heart or over your belly. You might take those breaths or connect into your feet on the earth or the seat of your chair underneath you. And just take a moment to just be with your anger and to tend to it. Because when we're angry, we're in a state of hyper arousal. And hyper arousal is where that fight response sits alongside the flight and other fear responses. And in that fight response, we are ready to go because it's instinctive. Actually, if you think about when our fight flight response kicks off, before we know it, we can be there with our fists clenched and our sleeves rolled up, ready to fight. But actually, when we stop and we breathe with it, when we take that moment's pause, it can change everything. Because in that moment, we're inviting ourselves to deepen into our consciousness. In meditation, the reason that we connect into our breath at the start of it is that actually our breath gives us an anchor into the present moment. It brings us back into the now. So when we allow ourselves to connect and to breathe into it, we are tending to our nervous system, which really needs it throughout our grief, because grief is dysregulating for our nervous system. But also, what we often find happens is that from that place of presence and connection, we can see that there's a few pathways ahead of us. And within those pathways, we can then make a conscious decision about where we wish to go. So through all these practices where we're bringing in awareness of our anger, we can also bring in awareness that is going to inform our forwards path. How can I navigate my path forwards in the most compassionate way? Now, that's not to say that you won't speak your truth and that you won't put those boundaries up as and when you need to. But what I'm trying to say here is that sometimes it's the delivery, it's the way that we do it. It's being able to just stop and take a pause and be a little bit more subjective than if we're doing it in a very subconscious fight response. I'm just going in before I even think, and I'm going to, which I have definitely done many times in my life. I'm just going to run my mouth off in this moment and then regret it later. Sometimes just a couple of breaths is enough for us to be able to bring that consciousness, that presence in, to then navigate that forwards path through compassionately. Third up, we've got moving with it. Now, this is a really powerful practice where we can get very creative and do this in a way that is in tune with us, what we love to do, our preferences, and most importantly, what feels good in our body. Because anger is a difficult emotion for us to acknowledge oftentimes that it's there. Again, this is down to our societal conditioning. It can feel really uncomfortable. What if we allowed ourselves to move with it? What if we allowed ourselves to let that energy of anger move through our body? And this might be going for a walk and stomping our feet, or a bit like I did out in the forest, kicking piles of dirt and piles of leaves and throwing rocks and sticks. It might be, if you like dancing, it might be that you want to put your favorite tune on and dance to it or mosh to it. It could be that you shake your arms and you shake your body, which actually is a mammalian response to be able to just shake off stress. There's a reason why our dogs, when something scares them or angers them, why straight afterwards they just go, "Boo," and they shake everything off. Shaking our body can be really powerful for our nervous system. What we can do is, by flowing through, we can let our body, and perhaps our voice as well. Some people like to sing at the top of their lungs, sing a song that is just about anger and expressing it. What this can do is help us to express our anger where perhaps we're not able to in words. Then next up, we've got writing it down. Now, writing is one of my ride or die practices. I do it every single day. And you often hear about journaling from the perspective of gratitude practices, setting your intentions, things that are joyful. But also when it comes to journaling on things that feel difficult, it can be really, really powerful. And actually, science shows that journaling is a form of therapy. It's very, very supportive for us in our healing journey forwards. So you might like to just free write on a page and be as messy as you like to, pour your thoughts out onto that page. Or you might like to write a letter to yourself or to the person who you're angry about, knowing that you don't have to send that letter, whether they're alive, the person you're angry with, or they're the person who's died. That letter never needs to reach them in any ways. And know as well, and I found this quite cathartic, that actually afterwards what you can do is tear that piece of paper up. Or you could, in a very safe way, I will caveat this, do it in a way that is, in a heat-proof bowl and going to not cause any problems. But in the past, I have burnt letters out in the garden in a heat-proof bowl and then doused it in water afterwards to make sure it's fully extinguished safely. And that's been really cathartic for me, to be able to set that on fire or put it on the barbecue and just stand back and watch those words burning. Then next up, we've got contain the fire. Now, this is not about putting the fire out. It's not about, pouring a bucket of water over this. What this is about is understanding your toolkit of practices that can help you to just be with this right now, that can help to, a bit like in the breathing bit earlier, that can help to support your nervous system, perhaps can help you to just care for yourself, look after yourself. And these can be really simple things like going for a calming walk in nature. Within my own journey, I know that actually, I mean, I'm a Pisces, so I'm not surprised that I love water, but going to one of the lakes or the ponds nearby me, that helps to just bring a sense of calm and a sense of perspective when I'm feeling really, really pissed off, or when I'm feeling anything else in my waves of grief. Could also be that you go and take a shower. You go and do something as simple as I'm going to go and plant my feet on the earth, or I'm going to go and get my hands in the soil. I'm going to go and tend to my garden. Or it could be as simple as placing your hand on your heart and just reminding yourself, this is a part of my grief. And if your grief is that connection to the love, the person who you've lost, with that acknowledgement that sometimes that love can be very, very complicated, you can also remind yourself that what I'm feeling right now is a part of my love too. And just in the space of containing the fire, I've actually got a guided meditation to go along with this episode. And in that meditation, you're going to visualize your anger like a flame. You're going to contain it. And then you're also going to see what insights unfold from that flame that light your forwards path. So if you want to do that meditation, then either click on the link in the corner of this video to go straight to that meditation, or head to the show notes. And finally, and really importantly, seek the support that you need. Be this friends, family, be this professional help from therapists, from a coach, be this from finding a local grief group that is run perhaps by a charity or another organization. Finding people who can hold us in our anger without judgment is really, really powerful. Just as I found with my cousin, it gave me the permission for me to feel and to move through it. I think it's really important for us to understand that we don't have to carry it alone. And I will say as well, because I sometimes get comments from people on just this, that there is an acknowledgement here that for some people, maybe in your network of people in your world, be it friends, be it families, that actually that isn't people who can support you in that way. And actually from my own journey, that's where I found local support groups to be really, really powerful. So what I did there was just had a Google. I understood, okay, this charity, for example, Petals in the UK, is for bereaved parents. And I reached out to them, and actually they had group therapy that I could access for free. So there's always, always connection and support that's out there. And I would definitely say go and advocate for yourself. And equally, speaking to a medical professional, speaking to your doctor, they can also be really helpful to signpost mental health support services that are out there that can help to hold you in what you're feeling. And within my own personal journey as well, I found both therapy as well as coaching really, really powerful. With my therapist, it's really helped me to explore the wounds that lie underneath my anger, that are rooted in the past, in situations, experiences, family dynamics, etc. And then in my own coaching work that I do with my clients, as well as in me being grief coached, it's really, really powerful from the perspective of being present with what is today and using that awareness to help me to move through my grief and to navigate the forwards path with deeper awareness, intention, and alignment to myself. And finally, I want to end this episode with a note to self. And my little note to self is just a reminder to myself that when my anger burns, I will let it speak and I will let it move. Because actually, when I let it move through me, that's where I can grab my journal, which I would definitely also recommend that you do as you're doing these practices, and capturing any juicy awareness and insights that arise. But hand on my heart, ending this episode as I always do, saying that wherever you are in your journey, whatever is coming up, know that I'm here. Death on the Daily is always here. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you received something from it, I would love it if you could just hit that subscribe button. It really helps me in my mission to get the word out there to more people about these conversations that we need to be having. And know that I'm sending you lots and lots of love. Thank you for joining me on Death on the Daily. If you like this episode, it would mean a lot if you could hit subscribe. Plus, head to the show notes to find out about my work as a grief coach, and there's a grief journaling freebie there for you. Until we meet here next time, take good care of yourself and others.
There's a cold fire, there's a crossfire, and there's some